I don't remember exactly when it started. Maybe it was around 2 a.m., that's when everything usually goes wrong. The streets were silent, the kind of silence that feels like a warning. I was driving home from work, exhausted, eyes burning from staring at the monitor for too long. The GPS told me to take a shortcut through a part of town I didn't recognize, Pine Hollow Park. I'd never heard of it before. But I followed anyway. The road narrowed, and my headlights brushed against rows of decaying trees. The pavement cracked under my tires. It looked abandoned, like no one had driven here for years. The GPS flickered once, then went black. And just like that, my car engine died. No signal. No light except the pale yellow moon. I tried to start the car again, but the key just clicked uselessly. Then, in the distance, I saw something strange, faint lights glowing beyond the trees. They flickered like carnival bulbs, colorful and out of place. A sign stood near the edge of the woods, rusted but still legible. Horror Park, always open. At first, I laughed. It had to be some kind of old Halloween attraction. Maybe the lights were still running from an old generator. Curiosity overrode exhaustion, and I stepped out of the car. The air smelled like damp leaves and rusted metal. Every step toward that sign felt heavier, like the ground didn't want me there. When I reached the entrance, the lights above buzzed faintly, some flickering in and out. Beyond the rusted gates, I could see rides, a Ferris wheel, a carousel, and a roller coaster track vanishing into darkness. Everything was motionless, yet I could hear something faint, laughter. Distant, hollow, childlike laughter echoing across the park. I should have turned back. Instead, I pushed the gate open. The sound it made was like a scream, metal scraping against metal. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt something strange. The air shifted, like the park had swallowed me whole. The gate slammed shut behind me, even though there was no wind. I turned around, and the road was gone. Not just dark, gone. All that remained behind the fence was an endless yellow hallway, stretching into nowhere, with buzzing fluorescent lights above. That's when I realized, this wasn't a normal place. I'd clipped through reality. I was in the backrooms. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go except forward. The park looked real enough, the asphalt paths, the rides, the smell of popcorn long gone stale. Yet everything felt wrong. The proportions were off. The carousel horses were too tall. The benches curved slightly, like they were melting. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" The echo came back distorted, "Here, here, here," like the park was mocking me. I wandered deeper. There was a ticket booth near the center plaza, the glass cracked, and behind it, a mannequin wearing a faded uniform, its face painted with a smile. But its eyes weren't painted. They looked like real eyes, glassy and wet, staring directly at me. My stomach twisted. I stepped back, tripping over a discarded balloon. When I looked down, the balloon had writing on it in marker. "You're not supposed to be here." I froze. Then I heard the music. A distant carousel tune began to play, slow and broken, like an old record winding down. The horses started moving, creaking in unison, though no one was there to push the lever. I felt something brush my shoulder, soft, like fabric. I turned. Nothing. But the air behind me shimmered faintly, like heat rising from asphalt. "Hello?" I said again, voice shaking. This time, the echo answered differently. "Stay, stay, stay." The lights around the park flickered, and suddenly I wasn't alone. Near the Ferris wheel stood a figure, tall, thin, completely still. It wore a carnival mascot costume, a grinning bear, head tilted to the side. But something was wrong with the proportions. The limbs were too long. The head twitched slightly, like something inside was adjusting itself. It lifted its hand, and waved. I took one step back. Then another. The bear tilted its head further, like it was studying me. And then the carousel lights exploded into motion. The music sped up, that same distorted tune, now playing at double speed. The horses spun faster, their painted eyes following me wherever I went. The air grew thick with static, like invisible electricity crawling over my skin. The mascot moved. Not walking, gliding. Its feet didn't make sound. I ran. Through the plaza, past the broken games, through corridors that shouldn't exist, halls made of stained yellow wallpaper, buzzing lights overhead. The park had melted into something else, endless rooms, repeating architecture, the smell of mold and dust. I'd fallen deeper. Deeper into the backrooms. I don't know how long I'd been running. Time didn't feel real anymore. Every corner looked the same, endless corridors lined with faded wallpaper, buzzing lights flickering overhead. My lungs burned, but the air didn't even taste like air. It was thick, heavy, stale, like breathing dust. Behind me, I could still hear faint footsteps. Not human ones. Slow. Wet. Uneven. I ducked into a side hall, the smell changed instantly. Burnt sugar, engine oil, and something sweet, like old cotton candy. The corridor opened into another section of the park, or what looked like a park. A funhouse, its mirrored walls fractured and glistening in the dim light. Above the entrance, a flickering neon sign buzzed. Laugh if you dare. My hands trembled as I pushed the door open. The interior was endless reflections. At first, I only saw my own terrified face, multiplied 100 times, distorted and stretched. But as I took another step, I realized one reflection wasn't me. It stood still when I moved. Its eyes were too dark. Too deep. I turned around, no one was there. When I looked back at the mirrors, that other me was gone. The laughter started again. The same childlike giggles, echoing through the mirrored maze. But now, they were closer, right behind my ears, whispering things I couldn't make out. My reflection started to warp, the smile widening until it split across the cheeks like torn paper. I bolted through the mirrors, crashing into glass until I found another door. It opened into what looked like a staff corridor, gray walls, metal floors, humming fluorescent bulbs. A maintenance area. There were maps taped to the wall, but none of them made sense. The layout kept looping back on itself: Maintenance Tunnel A, Hall C, Ride Zone Tunnel A. No exit. Then I noticed something scrawled in marker at the bottom of one map. Stay near the lights. It sees in the dark. I turned slowly. The corridor behind me was already dimming. One by one, the fluorescent bulbs flickered out, pop, 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 until only one remained above me. And from the darkness ahead, I heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Heavy. I held my breath. Something scraped against the metal floor, a dragging sound, like claws or maybe bones. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, but the last bulb above me began to flicker. Each time it blinked, I caught glimpses, a silhouette, long arms, no face, just empty space where eyes should be. When the light went out completely, I ran. I don't remember how I got out of that tunnel. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the park just changed again. Because suddenly, I was outside, or what felt like outside. The night sky above was a deep, unnatural purple. The stars were arranged in patterns that didn't exist. And in front of me was the roller coaster. Its track rose high into the air, twisting in impossible angles. The carts were still, except for one. It sat at the loading platform, lights flickering around it like dying fireflies. A voice crackled from an unseen speaker. Next ride departs in 5 seconds. My heart pounded. I didn't know why, but I climbed in. The bar locked automatically. The cart jerked forward. As it started to climb the first hill, I realized there was no sound, no chains pulling it upward, no wind. Just silence. And then, halfway up, I saw something beneath the tracks, a swarm of figures crawling over the metal supports, their limbs bending backwards, faces blank and smooth. When the cart reached the top, I looked down, and the park was gone. Only an endless expanse of yellow rooms below, stretching in every direction. Then the cart plunged straight down. But there was no impact. Instead, I fell through the air, through walls, through space itself, until I hit the ground hard enough to knock the breath out of me. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a food court. Tables overturned, trays scattered, plastic chairs melted into strange shapes. A neon sign buzzed overhead, refreshments. The smell was unbearable, like spoiled meat and sugar. Behind one counter, there was a figure in an apron, face hidden behind a mask of peeling latex. It looked like an animatronic cook. Its hands twitched, jerking as if stuck between motions. And then, in a glitchy, broken voice, it spoke. "Would you like something to eat?" I backed away, shaking my head. The thing tilted its head, and the mask slid off halfway, revealing something underneath that wasn't mechanical. Flesh. Wet and moving. It grinned, wide, too wide, and took a step forward. I turned and ran again. Every corridor led to another version of the park, one made of different materials, different lighting. In some, everything was wet and pulsing, like the walls were alive. In others, the air was freezing, my breath visible even though there was no wind. And always, that faint laughter followed. At some point, I stopped running and started crawling through a vent. It was the only way forward. The metal was freezing cold. Every few feet, I heard something behind me, crawling too. When I reached the end, I pushed open the grate, and froze. I was back at the entrance gate. Or what looked like it. The same "Horror Park, always open" sign flickered above me. My car was still there, covered in dust like it had been abandoned for years. I stumbled forward, hands trembling, desperate to get out. I pulled the gate, it didn't move. I slammed it with my shoulder, kicked it, screamed, nothing. Then, from behind me, a voice whispered. "You've already left." I turned. The mascot bear stood there again, closer this time. The head tilted slightly, the mouth open just enough to reveal human teeth underneath the costume fabric. It reached out a hand. I froze, too terrified to move, and then everything blinked. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in my car. Engine running. GPS glowing normally. The road ahead was empty, clear. The park sign, gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to breathe, trying to convince myself it was a dream. Eventually, I drove home. But when I pulled into my driveway and stepped out of the car, I noticed something on the back seat. A small, deflated balloon. Written on it, in the same marker ink as before. "See you soon." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the park. The mirrors. The face that wasn't mine. The whisper, "You've already left." Morning came, but it didn't feel real. The sunlight looked wrong. Too pale, too static, like the world was only pretending to move. My phone said it was Tuesday. But when I checked the calendar, it skipped from Sunday straight to Friday. I tried to convince myself I'd lost track of time, shock, exhaustion, maybe even a hallucination. But deep down, I knew something had followed me back. The balloon was still on the car seat. Only now, the words had changed. "Hungry yet?" That was when I noticed it, a faint smell of cotton candy coming from inside my house. I froze. I hadn't eaten anything sweet in days. The smell led me to the hallway, the one with the mirror near the front door. I stepped closer and stared into my reflection. It looked normal, except, the background behind me wasn't my hallway. It was the park gate. The reflection smiled before I did. Then it blinked, once, twice, and I felt something cold crawl across my spine. The phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up. Silence. Then static. Then, through the distortion, a voice. You forgot your ticket. The call ended. I looked down, and in my hand, there was something. A folded, crumpled paper ticket. It wasn't there before. It read. Admit 1, Horror Park. Return ride. I dropped it, but when it hit the floor, it didn't fall, it just sank, like disappearing into water. The room around me twisted. The walls stretched, the lights dimmed, and suddenly, I wasn't home anymore. I was standing back at the park gate. The air hummed with that same, electric stillness. The mascot bear stood behind the ticket booth, motionless. The sign flickered again, open forever. I didn't even fight it this time. I just walked in. Something inside me knew I couldn't leave until I understood what this place was. Or maybe I was never meant to leave at all. The main path led deeper into the dark, past the funhouse, past the roller coaster, now both in ruins. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the entire park was breathing. Every step I took echoed like I was walking inside a hollow body. I reached a gate labeled Employees Only. It was slightly ajar. Inside was an office, old, decayed, covered in papers. On the desk, there was a single tape recorder, still working, the red light blinking. I pressed play. A man's voice came through, tired, nervous. This is Manager Log 47. If you're hearing this, you shouldn't be here. The park's not real, it's a containment. We thought we were building an attraction. We weren't. We were feeding it. The sound of distant screaming echoed behind his words. It wants stories. People. Memories. It shows you what you fear most. And when you stop being afraid, it takes you anyway. The tape clicked off. I stared at the recorder for a long time. My reflection in the dark screen started to move on its own again, smiling wider than I could. Behind me, something whispered. Your story isn't finished yet. I turned, and saw them. Dozens of figures, half human, half reflection, standing in the dark. Their eyes glowed faint yellow. Some had my face. Others had faces I recognized from the mirrors, visitors who never escaped. They didn't move, just watched. Then the lights exploded, a surge of static, sound, pain, and I was back in the carousel. It was turning slowly, though no music played. The horses were melting into the floor, their eyes hollow. A figure stood in the center, the mascot bear, only now the costume was torn open, revealing something underneath. Flesh. Veins. Eyes that didn't blink. It raised one hand, and the world paused. Everything, the flickering lights, the spinning carousel, froze mid-motion. I could hear only my heartbeat. Then, a voice filled the air, deep and echoing, not from its mouth, but from everywhere. Why do you run from what you are? I tried to speak, but my throat locked. You came here because you didn't believe. Because you thought horror was just a story. But stories live longer than people. The floor cracked open. Beneath it, the same yellow rooms from before, endless, stretching forever. Every scream feeds me. Every memory builds another hull. You were never visiting, you were being written. And then I understood. This place wasn't a park. It was a story that fed on those who told it. Every terrified thought, every retelling, every video made about it, gave it more power, more reality. It didn't want me dead. It wanted me to speak. To share it. The mascot lowered its hand. The carousel started again, spinning faster and faster. My vision blurred, the world stretched, and then, silence. I woke up in front of my computer. My microphone was on. The recording light blinked red. The waveform showed hours of audio I didn't remember recording, my own voice, whispering things I couldn't understand. The file was titled horrorpark_final_cut.wave. I hovered my mouse over it. My reflection on the black monitor smiled again. Without thinking, I uploaded it. When I refreshed the page, the title had changed by itself. The Backrooms, Horror Park, True Story. Thousands of views appeared instantly. I stared in horror as the comments flooded in. I've been there too. The mirrors smiled back. The mascot's outside my house. And then, one final comment, pinned automatically to the top. See you soon, smiley face. That night, I heard the carousel music outside my window. I looked out, nothing. But the reflection in the glass showed the park gates, wide open. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and sat there in the dark, waiting for morning. It never came. The world outside the window froze mid-motion, cars stopped, leaves hung still, even the air felt solid. The only thing that moved was my reflection. It smiled. Lifted a balloon. And whispered. Now it's your turn to feed the story.